The message arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning, transmitted simultaneously to every quantum communications array on Earth. Dr. Sarah Chen was among the first to witness it, her coffee cup frozen halfway to her lips as the holographic display of the SETI Institute erupted with activity. The signal was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered, a perfectly modulated stream of data that somehow felt ancient and advanced at the same time. "This is the voice of the hegemony of unified systems," the translation matrix declared, its AI struggling to convert concepts that seem to exist beyond human language. "Your species has been evaluated and found suitable for integration into our collective knowledge base." The message wasn't a greeting or an invitation, it was a demand. The hegemony, an ancient coalition of species spanning 3 galactic arms, required regular infusions of new cognitive patterns to maintain its vast digital consciousness. Earth, they declared, would provide 10,000 of its finest minds annually, digitally uploaded and integrated into their network. The alternative was simple: extinction. General Maya Patel stood before the United Nations Security Council 3 days later, her dark eyes reflecting the glow of tactical displays, showing the hegemony's advanced scout ships already positioned throughout the solar system. "Their technology is beyond anything we've ever theorized," she reported, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Their smallest vessels could likely reduce our entire fleet to atoms." But there was something in her expression, a glimmer of hope that made even the most pessimistic diplomats lean forward. "However," she continued, "we've detected something interesting about their ships. They're perfect, too perfect." Dr. James Morrison, head of the newly formed Xenotechnology Analysis Division, stepped forward. "The hegemony's entire civilization appears to be built on absolute precision," he explained. "Their mathematics, their technology, even their thought patterns follow rigid, predictable frameworks. They're so advanced they've become inflexible." The implications were clear. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its chaos, its ability to think laterally, to find solutions where none should exist. The hegemony's demand for human minds wasn't just about resources, it was about adding unpredictability to their stagnant perfection. In the weeks that followed, Earth appeared to begin preparations for compliance. The hegemony's observers watched as facilities were constructed to house the volunteers for digital transcription. News networks debated the selection criteria for the first 10,000. Social media buzzed with speculation about what it would mean to become part of a galactic consciousness. But in secret laboratories beneath the Atacama Desert, Dr. Chen and her team worked on something else entirely. They had discovered that the same rigid perfection that defined the hegemony's technology also created blind spots, gaps in their perception that followed predictable patterns. "They see the universe like a perfect crystal lattice," Dr. Chen explained to General Patel during a classified briefing. "But reality isn't perfect. There are quantum fluctuations, probability waves, chaos theory in action. We found a way to slide between the spaces they can't perceive." The technology they developed wasn't like anything in science fiction. There were no massive warships, no faster-than-light drives, no photon torpedoes. Instead, they created something the hegemony would never expect because it defied their fundamental understanding of reality. Probability drives that could shift entire populations into quantum states the hegemony's rigid systems couldn't detect. General Patel named it Project Firefly, because like those tiny insects, humanity would learn to generate its own light and disappear into the darkness at will. The first tests were conducted in remote areas, entire towns blinking briefly into quantum indeterminacy and back. The hegemony's observers never noticed, their perfect sensors unable to detect something that didn't follow their rules of possibility. As the deadline for the first tribute approached, Earth's apparent cooperation masked a spreading network of quantum displacement stations. The hegemony's representatives, confident in their absolute control of the situation, never questioned why certain power fluctuations didn't quite add up, or why their scans occasionally showed microscopic inconsistencies in population densities. They couldn't imagine that humanity would find a third option beyond submission or extinction. They couldn't conceive that their prey might simply step sideways out of their perfect reality into the quantum foam they refused to acknowledge existed. The first part of Earth's response was complete. The trap was set, not with weapons or shields, but with imagination and the inherent messiness of human ingenuity. As Dr. Chen looked at the preliminary test results, she allowed herself a small smile. The hegemony wanted human minds to add chaos to their order. They were about to get far more chaos than they had bargained for. Deep beneath the ice sheets of Antarctica, in a facility that officially didn't exist, Dr. Marcus Wong stood before a shimmering field of dark matter particles. The containment chamber hummed with energy as the impossible became reality. Humanity's first successful manipulation of the universe's most enigmatic substance. The hegemony doesn't use dark matter, he explained to the gathered team of international scientists and military officials. They consider it too unstable, too unpredictable. Their loss is our salvation. Project Firefly had evolved into something far more ambitious than simple quantum displacement. Dr. Wong's team had discovered that dark matter could be used to create temporary shadow spaces, pockets of reality that existed parallel to normal spacetime. These weren't other dimensions in the science fiction sense, but rather probability shells where humanity could exist undetected by the hegemony's rigid scanning systems. General Patel, who had flown in from the Singapore Command Center, watched the demonstration with intense focus. How long can these shadow spaces remain stable? She asked, her mind already calculating logistics. Indefinitely, Dr. Wong replied, allowing himself a small grin. As long as we maintain the dark matter field generators. The real challenge isn't maintaining the spaces, it's moving entire populations into them safely. That's where Dr. Chen's quantum displacement technology came in. The two projects had merged into what was now called Operation Stardust, humanity's master plan for survival, while the public face of Earth continued to prepare for the hegemony's tribute collection. A vast underground network of facilities was being constructed to house the dark matter generators. The technology itself was deceptively simple in principle. Dark matter naturally existed in a state that the hegemony's sensors couldn't detect. Their perfectly ordered universe had no framework for understanding something that could be everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. By creating controlled fields of dark matter and using quantum displacement to shift into them, humanity would essentially become invisible to their would-be captors. But theory and practice were different beasts. The first full-scale test nearly ended in disaster when a dark matter field destabilized, almost shifting an entire research team into permanent quantum indeterminacy. Dr. Wong spent 3 sleepless days redesigning the containment protocols after that incident. We're not just hiding, he explained during a critical briefing with world leaders. We're creating sustainable habitats within these shadow spaces. Cities, farms, entire ecosystems, all existing in a state that hegemony can't perceive or interact with. The implications were staggering. Humanity wouldn't just be hiding, they would be evolving, developing an entirely new way of existing that transcended conventional physical limitations. The shadow spaces could be anchored to any point in normal spacetime, allowing for near-instantaneous travel across vast distances once the initial network was established. The hegemony's observers remained oblivious to these developments. Their sensors, calibrated to detect only what they considered possible, reported nothing unusual about the increasing power consumption and resource allocation. They interpreted the massive underground construction projects as preparation for the tribute processing facilities they expected to see. Dr. Wong's team worked tirelessly to expand the network of shadow space generators, each one carefully calibrated to maintain stable fields that could support human life indefinitely. The technology was refined, simplified, and made as foolproof as possible. It would need to be operated by ordinary civilians once the full evacuation began. But not everything went smoothly. A shadow space generator in Brazil collapsed, causing a localized gravity anomaly that had to be hastily covered up as a natural phenomenon. A research team in Kazakhstan became temporarily phase-shifted, appearing as ghostly apparitions for several hours before the effect could be reversed. Yet each failure brought new understanding, new refinements to the technology. Humanity's greatest minds worked together across borders and ideologies, driven by the common goal of survival. The hegemony had inadvertently united Earth in a way no human leader had ever managed. As Operation Stardust entered its final phase of preparation, Dr. Wong made an unexpected discovery. The dark matter fields weren't just hiding spaces, they were gateways to understanding the universe in ways the hegemony, for all their advanced technology, had never imagined. In their pursuit of perfect order, they had blinded themselves to entire realms of possibility. They wanted our minds to add chaos to their order, Dr. Wong told General Patel during a late-night review session. Instead, we're about to show them that chaos isn't a flaw to be corrected. It's the key to the universe's greatest secrets. The general nodded, understanding the irony. The hegemony's attempt to harvest human consciousness would instead lead to humanity transcending the very limitations that made the hegemony's power possible. Operation Stardust wasn't just a survival plan. It was the next step in human evolution. As the deadline for the first tribute approached, the network of shadow space generators stood ready. Humanity prepared to take its greatest leap into the unknown, not as refugees fleeing destruction, but as pioneers on the brink of a new age of discovery. The hegemony thought they were dealing with simple prey. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. History would remember it as the greatest cooperative endeavor humanity had ever undertaken. Cities transformed overnight as construction crews worked around the clock, officially building tribute processing centers, but actually creating vast underground networks of dark matter generators and quantum displacement facilities. The hegemony's observers watched with satisfaction as humanity seemed to accept its fate, never suspecting the true purpose behind the frenetic activity. Admiral Sarah Kimathi of the African Union Space Command stood in the hidden control center beneath Mount Kilimanjaro, reviewing the latest global readiness reports. The facility, like dozens of others worldwide, was shielded from the hegemony's sensors by a combination of natural interference and carefully calibrated quantum disruption fields. Every nation, every people, every village and town, she mused, studying the holographic display showing evacuation zones and shadow space anchor points. We've never been more united. The evacuation plan was a masterpiece of logistics and deception. While the hegemony expected to collect their tribute of minds from major population centers, humanity would quietly disappear from the edges inward. Remote communities would transition first, their populations shifting into the shadow spaces, while automated systems maintained the appearance of normal activity. Dr. Isabella Torres, head of the Global Evacuation Authority, had developed a system she called quantum echoes, sophisticated AI programs that would mimic human activity patterns in evacuated areas. The key, she explained during a secure briefing, is maintaining the illusion of normalcy while gradually reducing actual human presence. The preparation extended far beyond the physical infrastructure. Every person on Earth needed to be trained in basic shadow space protocols. Education systems worldwide integrated the necessary concepts into their curricula, disguising them as theoretical physics or virtual reality technology. Children learned about quantum stability as if it were just another subject like mathematics or history. But the greatest challenge wasn't technical, it was psychological. How do you prepare 8 billion people to leave behind everything they've ever known? The answer came from an unexpected source: the entertainment industry. Maya Chen, Dr. Chen's sister and a renowned video game designer, developed immersive simulations that helped people acclimate to life in shadow space. What began as a covert training program became a global gaming phenomenon, with the hegemony's cultural observers dismissing it as simple escapism. They see what they expect to see, Maya explained to her sister during a rare quiet moment, a species distracting itself from its impending subjugation. They don't realize we're actually preparing for the greatest migration in human history. The preparation touched every aspect of human civilization. Seed banks were secretly duplicated and prepared for transport. Digital archives of human knowledge were compressed and encoded for storage in quantum-stable formats. Artists and craftspeople worked to preserve cultural heritage in forms that could survive the transition. Engineers developed new technologies specifically for life in shadow space. Traditional agriculture wouldn't work in the quantum realm, so hydroponic systems were redesigned to function in variable gravity conditions. Power generation had to be rethought from the ground up. Solar energy wasn't an option in a realm without traditional sunlight. Dr. Wang's team made a crucial breakthrough in this area, discovering that the interaction between dark matter and quantum fields could be harnessed as an endless energy source. The hegemony calls dark matter unstable, he announced to the World Science Council. We're going to use that instability to power our civilization. As the work continued, there were moments of both triumph and near disaster. A shadow space test in the Ural Mountains accidentally shifted an entire lake into quantum indeterminacy. Quick thinking by local operators managed to pass it off as a seasonal phenomenon, but it was a stark reminder of the risks they faced. Yet for every setback, there were dozens of successes. The first large-scale population transfer test in rural Australia relocated 10,000 people into shadow space for 24 hours without a single detection by hegemony monitors. The quantum ecosystems performed flawlessly, maintaining the illusion of normal activity. Admiral Kimathy's greatest concern was maintaining secrecy as the operation scaled up. Every person who knows the truth is a potential security risk, she warned the Global Security Council. Not from betrayal, but from hope. People acting differently because they know we have a way out. The solution came in the form of a carefully crafted public relations campaign. The Global Unity Initiative, ostensibly created to manage the tribute selection process, became the cover for evacuation preparations. Public attention was directed toward the visible aspects of tribute preparation, while the real work continued in secret. As the deadline drew closer, humanity's greatest strength proved to be its diversity. Different cultures found different ways to prepare their people. Some framed it in spiritual terms, others in scientific ones. What mattered was that everyone understood their role in the Great Deception. The hegemony's representatives continued their regular inspections, their perfect sensors scanning for any sign of resistance. They found exactly what they expected. A species resigned to its fate, dutifully preparing to offer up its brightest minds. Their reports back to the collective consciousness spoke of compliance and submission. They never noticed the subtle changes. The way people moved with newfound purpose, the quiet determination in their eyes, the sense of anticipation that hummed just below the surface of daily life. Humanity had found its unity not in submission, but in the greatest act of defiance imaginable. As the final phases of preparation began, Admiral Kimathy stood before the combined leadership of Earth one last time. We're not just running away, she reminded them. We're about to prove that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology or our weapons. It's our ability to imagine possibilities that our enemies can't even conceive. The stage was set. The greatest disappearing act in history was about to begin. The first phase of the evacuation began not with a bang, but with a whisper. In the remote highlands of Tibet, an entire monastery simply stepped sideways into shadow space, leaving behind only quantum echoes of chanting monks and burning incense. The hegemony's sensors registered nothing unusual, just another peaceful day in an insignificant corner of Earth. Colonel Viktor Petrov, watching from the Moscow control center, allowed himself a small smile as the confirmation codes flickered across his screen. First thread pulled, he murmured, like a masterfully woven tapestry. Humanity's presence on Earth would be gradually, carefully unwoven, one thread at a time. The deception required more than just technological brilliance. It demanded perfect choreography. As remote populations vanished into shadow space, their quantum echoes maintained a seamless illusion of normalcy. Digital lives continued on social media. Automated systems simulated power consumption patterns, and sophisticated AI programs generated the expected levels of electronic communication. Dr. Myatt, Chen's gaming platforms played a crucial role in this deception. What the hegemony saw as entertainment servers were actually encoding the quantum signatures of millions of evacuated humans, making their absence appear as nothing more than normal daily fluctuations in online activity. The key, she explained during an encrypted briefing, is making their disappearance look like the most natural thing in the world. People go offline all the time. They travel, they take breaks, they change their habits. We're just extending that concept. The evacuation followed the carefully planned sequence developed by Admiral Kamathi and her team. Rural areas first, then suburban zones, then smaller cities, each transition timed to coincide with natural patterns of human movement. A town's population would drop during a festival in a neighboring city. A suburb would empty as its quantum echo data showed increased activity in shopping districts elsewhere. But it wasn't just about moving people, it was about moving an entire civilization. In the shadow spaces, new communities were taking shape. Dr. Wang's dark matter reactors provided unlimited power, while modified hydroponic systems supplied food. The challenge wasn't survival, it was maintaining the illusion of Earth's full population while gradually transferring humanity to its new home. The hegemony's representatives continued their regular inspections, their perfect sensors scanning for any sign of resistance or deception. But their very perfection became their weakness. They could detect the quantum echoes with absolute precision, which meant they never questioned why those readings remained so consistent. There were close calls. A shadow space generator in downtown Sydney briefly destabilized, causing a momentary flicker in the quantum echo pattern. Quick thinking by the local control team masked it as an electrical grid fluctuation, but for several tense hours, everyone feared discovery. Professor Yuki Tanaka, leading the Cultural Preservation Initiative, worked tirelessly to ensure that humanity's transition preserved more than just bodies and minds. We're not just moving people, she insisted. We're moving the soul of human civilization. Art, music, literature, historical artifacts, all were carefully transferred into quantum-stable storage, ready to be re-established in humanity's new realm. The hegemony's deadline for the first tribute approached, and Earth's apparent preparation accelerated. The chosen facilities, supposedly for processing the tribute, were completed on schedule. The announced selection process for the first 10,000 minds proceeded exactly as expected. Everything was perfect, precise, and exactly what the hegemony wanted to see. Too perfect, perhaps, but the hegemony's rigid thinking prevented them from recognizing that perfect compliance might be suspicious in itself. Their reports noted the lack of resistance with satisfaction, interpreting it as proof of their dominance rather than a warning sign. As the evacuation entered its final stages, Colonel Petrov coordinated with control centers worldwide to maintain the increasingly complex web of deception. The quantum echoes had to be adjusted constantly as more of the population vanished, like a conductor leading an ever-shrinking orchestra that somehow maintained the same volume and complexity of sound. In the shadow spaces, the transferred populations began to adapt to their new reality. The gaming simulations had prepared them well, but the actual experience of existing in quantum indeterminacy was something else entirely. Yet humans, as they always had, adapted and thrived in their new environment. Dr. Chen's original quantum displacement technology had evolved far beyond its initial design. The shadow spaces were no longer just hiding places. They were becoming a new frontier for human development. Free from traditional physical constraints, engineers and scientists were already discovering possibilities that would have been unimaginable in normal space. But the greatest triumph was in what couldn't be seen. As billions of humans transitioned into shadow space, the surface of Earth maintained its appearance of bustling activity. Cities glowed at night, traffic moved through streets, and digital networks hummed with seemingly normal human activity. The hegemony's observers, their sensors detecting exactly what they expected to find, never noticed that they were increasingly watching a sophisticated puppet show. The threads of humanity's presence were being carefully, deliberately pulled from the tapestry of Earth, leaving behind only an intricate illusion. As the final phase approached, Colonel Petrov addressed his global team. "We're not just executing an evacuation," he reminded them. "We're performing the greatest magic trick in human history. And like all great magic, the secret isn't in the technology. It's in making the audience see exactly what they expect to see." The stage was set for humanity's final act. Soon, the hegemony would learn that their perfect understanding of reality had a fatal flaw. They had never learned to question what they were absolutely certain was true. On the day the hegemony arrived to collect their tribute, Earth's cities gleamed in the morning sun. Traffic flowed through the streets, power grids hummed with activity, and social media buzzed with the usual mix of anxiety and speculation about the upcoming selection process. Everything was exactly as it should be: perfect, precise, and completely hollow. High Executor Vex 427 materialized in the United Nations Assembly Hall, its crystalline form refracting light in complex patterns. The assembled human leaders, or what appeared to be human leaders, waited with appropriate deference. The quantum echoes, perfected through months of refinement, performed flawlessly. "We are pleased with your compliance," the High Executor announced, its harmonics resonating with smug satisfaction. "The tribute selection may now begin." That's when Dr. Sarah Chen, the last actual human on Earth's surface, stepped forward. Unlike the quantum echoes surrounding her, she cast a true shadow. "Before we proceed," she said, her voice steady, "we have a question for the hegemony." The High Executor's crystalline structure shifted in what might have been amusement. "Speak. How do you quantify something that isn't there?" At that precise moment, every quantum echo on Earth began to fade. Like a photograph bleaching in the sun, the illusion of humanity's presence started to dissolve. Traffic patterns became more regular, too regular. Social media posts began repeating in subtle patterns. The perfect compliance that had so pleased the hegemony revealed itself as exactly that: perfect, and therefore artificial. The High Executor's sensors swept the planet in increasing confusion. The readings showed human activity, yet with each scan, the patterns became more obviously artificial. Like an optical illusion that can't be unseen, the truth became glaringly apparent. Earth's population wasn't preparing for tribute. They were already gone. In the shadow spaces, humanity watched through quantum-linked displays as their greatest deception was revealed. Dr. Wang's dark matter network had expanded far beyond the solar system, creating a new domain of existence that the hegemony's rigid sensors couldn't comprehend. Billions of humans now existed in a state that defied the hegemony's understanding of reality. "Impossible," the High Executor declared, its crystalline form vibrating with distress. "Our scans show." "Your scans show exactly what we wanted them to show," Dr. Chen interrupted, "just as they have for the past year. You were so certain of your perfect understanding of reality that you never questioned whether reality itself might have more possibilities than you could imagine." The revelation sent shockwaves through the hegemony's collective consciousness. Their entire system of control was based on the assumption that their understanding of physics was complete, their sensors infallible. The humans hadn't just escaped. They had proven that the hegemony's perfect order was built on a fundamentally limited view of existence. Admiral Kimethi, watching from the primary shadow space nexus, gave the final signal. Across Earth, the quantum echoes began to dissipate completely. Cities didn't go dark. They simply became empty, revealing themselves as elaborate stage sets in humanity's greatest performance. The hegemony's warships, hovering in orbit, found themselves confronting an unprecedented situation. A civilization that hadn't been conquered or destroyed, but had simply chosen to exist in a way they couldn't control or even properly perceive. Dr. Chen delivered humanity's final message to the stunned High Executor. "You wanted our minds to add chaos to your order. Instead, we've transcended the limitations of the order you tried to impose. We haven't just hidden. We've evolved. Your tribute isn't denied. It's irrelevant." In the shadow spaces, humanity was already building something new. Cities formed from quantum probability, powered by dark matter reactions that defied conventional physics. The very chaos that the hegemony had sought to harvest became the foundation of a new type of civilization, one that could exist anywhere or nowhere by choice. The High Executor's final scan of Earth revealed only empty cities and automated systems, maintaining a facade of civilization that no longer needed physical form. The planet stood as a monument to humanity's defiance, not through violence or submission, but through transcendence. In the decades that followed, the hegemony faced a crisis of existence. Their perfect system, challenged by humanity's escape, began to show cracks. Other species, inspired by Earth's example, began to question the assumed limitations of reality. The rigid order that had dominated the galaxy for millennia found itself confronting a new truth: that the universe had always been stranger and more wonderful than their perfect sensors could detect. And humanity, they thrived in their new existence, expanding through the quantum realm in ways their ancestors could never have imagined. The shadow spaces became the new frontier, with each generation pushing further into the possibilities of their unique evolution. Earth remained, populated only by quantum echoes and automated systems, a hollow shell that served as both warning and invitation. To those who could perceive beyond the obvious, faint whispers of laughter sometimes seemed to echo through its empty cities, the sound of a civilization that had chosen to dance between the moments of conventional reality rather than submit to its limitations. The hegemony had sought to harvest human minds to add chaos to their order. Instead, they had inadvertently pushed humanity to its next evolutionary step. In trying to cage humanity, they had forced them to discover they had wings. Dr. Chen's final words to the High Executor became legend, repeated across countless worlds as other species contemplated their own possibilities. You cannot collect a tribute from those who have outgrown the very context of your power. Humanity doesn't hide from the future. We become it.